What's going on, y'all? Welcome to episode 62 of the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. My name is Tyler Williams, and it is good to be back with you once again. We are rejoined on this week's episode by my co-host, Mr. Buddy Payne. And this week, we're talking about one of the most important parts of the fan experience of a race, the announcer. The voice you hear, whether it's over the speaker system or through the television screen, or maybe just on your radio. Racing, obviously, is the whole reason that we're at the track. We're there to see a great show. We're there to see a great race. We're there to kind of get that thrill. It's the best part of racing. But what can help make that race a little more memorable, or in some bad cases, make that thing one that you want to leave early or hit the mute button on the television, is the announcer. The voices are important. On today's episode, Buddy and I break down our favorite announcers of all time and of current, the ones that we love to hear paint the picture of the greatest sport in all the world, racing, motorsports, four wheels on a motor, let it fly, let it eat. These are our favorite announcers of all time and of the current ones working. On the other side of these messages, me and Buddy break it down here on the Half Priced Concessions Podcast.
When you're eating breakfast, you don't think twice about hitting an electric line in your cereal. If you're looking through your dresser, does damaging a fiber optic line cross your mind? Of course not, because those utilities are buried underground. So don't think twice about calling 811 before digging. 811 is a free service, takes as little as 5 minutes, protects you and your neighborhood, and it's the law. So call or click 811 today. This safety message brought to you by North Carolina 811.
The Half Price Concessions Podcast cannot say thank you enough to Roger Johnson and the awesome folks at the Performance Center Racing Warehouse for all their support of our podcast and of local racing. If you are an asphalt racer and you need your front or rear clip fixed, Performance Center has some of the quickest turnarounds in the country. In the market for a new race car, the PRW chassis is a proven winner. You need something for your asphalt late model stock race car, you need to get in touch with Roger Johnson and Performance Center Racing Warehouse today. Make sure you check out their website. It's performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. You can also like them on Facebook at Performance Center Racing Warehouse and call them today at 704-838-1400.
Hey podcast listeners, I'm Keith Montgomery of Montgomery Performance Consulting, and I want to help speed up your racing program. Whether you're racing dirt, asphalt, or road course, put my years of experience to work for you. Our pull-down services will help find where you're giving up speed so you can unload faster and run up front. We also offer trackside consulting and data testing to help you find speed and balance. And with our central location in Burlington, North Carolina, you can come to us for discounted rates on pull-down sessions. Call me today at 336-382-1835. Like us on Facebook at Montgomery Performance Consulting, and let us help your racing program today.
In today's world, you need every advantage you can get when it comes to your personal business or your race car. Accelerated Graphics can help you make the best first impression possible by looking sharp. Whether it's embroidery on hats, t-shirts, or polos, trophies, decals, wraps for your race car, wraps for your commercial car, Accelerated Graphics and Jason Turner can help make that possible and help give you a good, clean, professional look that not only attracts new customers, but attracts everybody and their mother to want to see how sharp your vehicles look. Call Accelerated Graphics today at 336-266-5653. Visit worth2tenths.com or find Accelerated Graphics on Facebook and get a hold of Jason Turner today.
Episode 62 of the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Buddy Payne back with us once again. And we're talking about a subject that is very near and dear. Well, you know what? I say very near and dear to our hearts on just about every time we talk about something. We enjoy a lot of aspects of racing. I think probably the only thing we don't enjoy about racing is the fact that sometimes we get rained out, or sometimes we're at a
crappy racetrack where the food sends us gut busting to the bathroom. Other than that, we could probably say
or not enough support divisions.
Or not enough support divisions.
We need more support divisions.
Hey, need more hot laps too while we're at it. Two is not enough. I need 6 per car.
Yes.
But talking race announcers, and I think where this one is special for us is we both have a little bit of tie into this. Most people probably don't know. You did a little bit of announcing yourself. I don't think you announced any races, but you did some, what was it, Southern Alamance soccer, some things like that.
Yeah.
We did a baseball game together one time. So you've done it a little.
Yeah, I did a lot of sports stuff for the high school. Did soccer teams, some baseball, basketball, JV football. They had the radio guys that were doing varsity football. But yeah, I think at one point that was kind of the career path I wanted to go until I actually met someone who we'll discuss later at a racetrack, and I was trying to get some tips and tricks. And he's like, if you want to be married and have kids, this ain't the life for you.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, it just really put it in perspective. He's like, every person you see on TV or hear on radio, there's about 1,000 people behind that person waiting for that job.
I will say one of my favorite memories of us, I think, was I forget what year it was. It might have been 2011, 2012, when you and I got to do a radio call of a Burlington Royals baseball game, the local minor league team when they were still affiliated, and that was super cool because I'd been announcing since '07, and I knew that you always kind of had it in the back of your head a little bit, but didn't get to do it. And the fact that we got to do that was a lot of fun. I don't even remember who won and lost. I think it almost rained on us a little bit. Yeah. The crow's nest was real sketchy. It was kind of like grandma's back porch that was barely nailed to the roof, but it was a lot of fun to do that, and because we both enjoyed baseball.
My favorite part of that memory is you sneezing live on air. And I was like,
I forgot how to hold it.
I mean, yeah, you didn't hold it then. I was like, man, both of our listeners are really surprised that just happened.
Yeah, I'm about to say both our listeners were your parents. But when it comes to race announcing, it's something that I know we comment and jab at a lot, whether we're watching a race on streaming or whether we go in person. And I don't know what your full opinion is, but mine is always, I've never not gone to a race because of an announcer, and I've never gone to a race because of an announcer, but I've always been of the opinion of I like for the announcer to help add something that I don't know, but I don't want the announcer to try to steal the show or act like he's more important, because he's not. I'm there to see the race cars and I'm there to see the drivers put on a show, but I've always been like, it's not going to make or break me on the announcer, but I do prefer someone that sounds like they know what the heck they're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want somebody that's relatable, and you want someone that adds to what you're watching. Someone that can describe things for an average fan who doesn't know the intricacies of the race or how a race program is ran, like what's a heat race and why are they doing this. It's good to have explanations for all that. And I think when just thinking about while we were doing the research stuff for this thing, as kids, we were both very fortunate, to kind of grow up at racetracks or local tracks or whatnot. And it just kind of dawned on me, like when you're a kid at a racetrack and it becomes an interest, you want to be one of three people. You either want to be a flagman, you want to be the announcer, or you want to be a driver.
Yep.
I mean, and how many tracks do we go to now and you see, 3 or 4 kids right behind the flag stand waving the flag? How many of them do you see mimicking a microphone or whatever? And of course, if everybody wants to drive at some point, but it's a big part, and it's a staple of a good track.
And it's funny, we'll get into our lists here. We've done a couple different lists of all-time favorite announcers, current favorite race announcers that we enjoy hearing. And it's funny because we cross a lot of disciplines here. Some of these guys are, nowadays I think there's more crossover than not, but there's, as far as announcing a race goes, there's the track guy, there's radio broadcast, MRN, PRN style, indie radio network, and then there's television. And it's funny because I think some people might sit there and think, well, what's really the difference? And I think you and I both know enough to know it is just a completely different dynamic between each of them. And I know a lot of the guys on my all-time list could do all three or did do all three during their career. But it's so funny because when it's the in-person, a lot of times you can't hear them while the green flag's out. But if it's like TV or radio, I mean, it's like you're almost hanging on their every word, especially radio. TV, you at least got the picture, but radio to me always stuck out in my head where it was like you sitting there trying to listen. I'd be trying to listen with somebody, and I'd go to ask a question like kids do, and get the shut up. Yeah, which I'm hanging on every word that such and such is saying. Kind of like baseball.
Yeah, like for me personally, growing up, we were antenna TV, so we would get, really even before NASCAR did the Fox thing, we would get a handful of races on ABC. I can't really remember or CBS. CBS would do some, but I mean, I had access to NASCAR specifically, maybe 10 races a year, roughly. So it was MRN, PRN, and it didn't matter where we were. We're listening to the Busch race on Saturday. If we're around the house working, Dad's got it going in the shop, or if we're driving somewhere, find the local radio station that's got MRN or PRN, and that was what told the story for me. That's what was going on. And then, you grab the newspaper the next day and look at the rundown and who blew up and all that kind of stuff. But, for me personally, that was what painted that visual picture, and I think that's where that appreciation for a good announcer came from.
So we'll go ahead and get started here, because I got a feeling it's going to take us a while to get through this list, because we're probably going to debate a few of these all-time top race announcers. And I've got to be honest, buddy. I know you sent me a text saying you're not going to believe who my number one is, or we're probably going to disagree quite a bit on this. But I've got this sneaky feeling we might have the same number one overall pick. I really do. I got it on a real hunch. So I don't know if you want to go with your first, you want to go with mine first. I would love to see if it's the same person. If it is, I might jump through your ceiling right now and put a hole in your roof.
It was very hard for me to put numbers beside them, and honestly, as I'm looking at it right now, they're changing in my mind.
Okay.
So I might just have to throw somebody out there. I think I can give you a number one, but as far as a 2 through 5, I don't know if I can do it, man.
Can I give you the stats on my number one and see if he's on your list?
Go ahead.
27 Indianapolis 500s on radio or television. Announcer for CART and IRL from 88 to 04, and NHRA from 2006 to 2012.
And the beautiful intro to the original IRL racing game on the computer.
We are talking Mr. Paul Page. He is my clear-cut number one. Like you said, some of these other ones, I could probably switch them around and it wouldn't offend me, but Paul Page to me was just always, he was just the epitome. He was to racing what I felt like whoever that guy is, Vern Lundquist does the Masters or whoever it is, and it's just that voice and that cadence and the tone that just you knew you could be blind as Ray Charles, hear Paul Page's voice, and is racing on the TV.
Yes.
Or radio. When he did the Indy 500 stuff, I loved listening to Paul Page do radio too.
Yes, and you don't get the nickname the voice of the 500, for nothing. I mean, and the dude's been, he got started in the late 60s, and he is just synonymous with Indy 500. And his background, of course, like I said, Indy, he did the CART stuff, and then, when NHRA is doing ESPN. But when I think Paul Page, and I used to watch the drag racing on ESPN, but when I think Paul Page, man, it's IndyCar and it's Indy 500.
Absolutely. Paul Page, absolutely. I can't get enough. If Paul Page could have announced my wedding, my wife might have hated it, but I would have gotten Paul Page down there to be like, can you give me play-by-play of my wedding?
And I was doing like a little bit like nugget information about him and stuff, and just some things I didn't know. He was a military kid, and he went to 12 different schools from elementary to 12th grade. So it was basically a different school year, and just the travel and stuff. And he actually got his start like for a local news station. But this was something I didn't know. He was in a helicopter crash doing a traffic report for the news station, and almost didn't even get to have the career that he did. And luckily got out with minor injuries and stuff there. But that was pretty wild. I would have never have thought that or never known that.
I'll tell you, the biggest nugget of his career that I found, a cameo appearance as an announcer in the world-renowned blockbuster film Driven, starring Sylvester Stallone. Oh, God, I can't even get through.
I forgot
what
that
a
movie,
bad
man.
movie that was. Poor Paul Page got sucked into it because he was the FedEx card announcer. So, I mean, he didn't really have much choice.
No.
But that wasn't exactly Days of Thunder.
Exactly. Here's a guy that talks about racing. Let's hire him.
I'm about to say, but I got to go Paul Page #1. So I know yours might not be ranked per se, but give me one of your top ones on your list.
Paul Page was definitely on the list. I don't know if I can put him #1. I will. I'll stay in that same vein. How about that?
Go ahead.
And this is probably and this is not a GOAT conversation. This is a personal favorite conversation.
Exactly.
We detest GOAT conversations, but my personal favorite, like I said, in that same vein of Paul Page, is going to be Mr. Bob Jenkins.
Ah, yes.
I love Bob Jenkins, and again, the early IndyCar stuff, ESPN, the ABC, and then of course when NBC got him and whatnot. And then I mean he had his career doing some NASCAR stuff too. But I mean he called a little bit of everything. I mean he did some like the old IMSA stuff for sports car racing back then. Did some F1, some kart, and he even did some NHRA as well. But Paul Page got him his start at Indy. He was a turn announcer, I believe, or a pit road. He was a pit road reporter, and gave him a shot. And Page saw the talent and the potential in him, and then I mean he took off from there. And he's as synonymous with Indy as Paul Page is in a certain light.
Yeah, I'm about to say I actually had Bob #4 on my list, but that list could really easily be mixed around or whatnot for all-time top 5. I forget what NASCAR game it was. It was one of the first NASCAR games where they would have the TV guys like do the little 20-second intro thing or whatever. And I remember Bob Jenkins on one of them. I was just like, oh, man.
NASCAR 98.
Yeah.
It was him and BP.
Yeah, because, I mean, Bob Jenkins got to call so many big things. He called the 92 Hooters 500 where it was that tight points battle and Alan Kulwicki won the championship. It's his voice calling that. There was just so many things, like you said. He was NASCAR on ESPN 1979 to 2000.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to stay in a regular job 21 years nowadays. I mean, that dude stayed in there, did kart, like you said. I did not know he had done IMSA. Mm-hmm. That to me would be tougher than some of these other ones.
Absolutely.
Is doing IMSA and being able to talk like you know what's going on. Did some F1, IRL television, and of course IMS Radio Network. Bob Jenkins, right there in that same vein as Paul Page to me.
He had a lot of firsts. He was the first announcer for NASCAR through ESPN. Like I said, it was 79, I believe. And so he's there that's right in the beginnings of ESPN. And then he called the first when NASCAR went to Indy for the Brickyard. He called the first one there. And he's been involved with the 500 in some manner, whether it be PA, I know he's done some fill-in roles, pit road reporter, whatever, since 1979. And I think was it this year or 2 years ago they had him do Carb Day because it was like kind of like brought him back kind of thing and let him do Carb Day.
I think he'd been sick or something.
Yeah, he'd been sick because his wife had when his wife passed away with cancer. He kind of he took some time off, to be there with her and to support that, and he quit that full-time role there. So now he's just kind of like a fill-in guy if they need it. But I mean, it is a retirement.
About to say, I'd love to have Bob Jenkins fill in, and I think. In the same vein as Paul Page, another guy that it wasn't some big, booming, overpowering voice, but it was just his style, the way he did it, his professionalism, and then just like it was like almost that saying less is more. Mm-hmm. So like you hung on what he was saying.
And I know it's not driven, but
he
was also Days of Thunder, and of course
he was in Days of Thunder.
He was in Days of Thunder and Talladega Nights.
I remember Jerry Punch being in Days of Thunder. I don't remember what.
Yep.
Oh yeah, opening sequence,
yep.
Daytona.
Yep.
Yeah, and then he was the PA. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And he was the booth guy on Ricky Bobby when they're doing the special about Jean Girard, and he comes back. He's just scared after he's kissing his husband. He's just like staring at the screen. That was perfect.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go, Bob. That had to be the highlight of his career.
Yes. So. No, he's made it.
Yeah. Another one on my all-time list. MRN from 1970 to 2014. The best quote I heard about him was if MRN is the voice of NASCAR, Barney Hall is the voice of MRN.
Absolutely.
You cannot have a top 5 motorsports announcer list without Barney Hall. And again, it was funny because you actually met him in person. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that picture you posted of him on MySpace or Facebook, whatever it was, tiny little guy.
Oh, yeah.
Looked like just like
He looked like a Smurf.
He looked like somebody that might be out there asking for change on the corner of a busy street at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
Not some big physical imposing, but like you said, so many of us have memories of riding down the road listening to MRN on Sundays, or somebody having MRN on in the shop or in the house or something. So many people talk about having the TV on the race on mute and having MRN radio on, and they were always listening to Barney Hall up until 2014. Another guy that, I mean, the fact that he stayed at MRN that long, I couldn't find any research whether he did any TV or not. I think he just stuck with MRN.
Yeah, all I know him from is radio. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I know his last race, excuse me, was the I guess it would have been the Coke.
The old
400
Pepsi
it used to be
400,
Pepsi or whatever. The summer race at Daytona, I remember that being his last one in 2014 and getting listened to it. And he was actually, he's a North Carolina kid. He was born in Elkin.
Yeah.
And did like most of these guys, they get started out with your local, school, college, or TV show, whatever. But he was the first PA guy at Bristol.
Yeah.
That was a little nugget I didn't know. But, oh yeah, I mean, he's, when you think MRN, I mean, it's Barney Hall. He went in the Hall of Fame there, the Press Association Hall of Fame in 2007. And I did have the good fortune to talk to him. One of the first times going to Martinsville when I was like kind of age, and I wasn't nervous to talk to people, whatever. That right there, I think it's going into turn 1. That's usually where the MRN trailer was. And they had like this little like fenced in lot around and stuff. And I just hung out there just trying to catch some of the personalities. And he walked out. And got an autograph and talked to him for a little bit there. Just a very personable guy. And then Darlington one year had pit passes, and he was down there, and it really got to have a good conversation then. I was much older then as well. And, oh, yeah, just talk to you, man, and just he could just spit off, his memory was just, perfect. And just spit off all this, crazy stats he was telling me about Darlington, like, old races he'd seen there. But, yeah, he was he's the man for sure, the voice of MRN.
Absolutely. Give me another one off your all-time top 5.
All-time top 5. Well, okay.
Well, not all-time top 5, just all-time list that you compiled.
Yes, in no particular order. This one, okay, well, we'll stick with the radio/TV theme here. I'm going Mr. Eli Gold.
I forgot about Eli.
Mr. Eli Gold. Now, I know college football fans probably know him, especially one of our devout listeners, Mr. Charlie Agnew, probably know him for a little bit different sport. But Eli Gold just had that iconic voice. He was just one of those, when he started talking to you, you knew exactly who you were listening to. But he was involved with NASCAR from 1976 all the way to 2016 MRN, when TNN had NASCAR there for a stint in the late 90s. And of course, he had the NASCAR Live program, and I remember that one. We'd listen to MRN. They always have that call-in show afterwards, and he would run it and stuff. I think I even called into it a few times. But he's done a little bit of everything, man. He was on the MRN, ESPN, CBS, NBC, of course, Alabama football. But this one was really neat to me. He called AFL games, NFL games, and he was the radio guy in the NHL for the Blues and for the Predators at one point. Yeah, so very, very diverse there.
Very wide resume there.
Yeah, very wide resume. And there's a guy, I think the track's in Minnesota, I want to say, because I've texted you about it when the late models are running there. And I was like, man, I swear this dude sounds just like Eli Gold. You flipped it over and listened to it. It's like, holy cow. I was like, man, he done moved over. It was not him, but that's the only other person I've ever heard sound like him. But he did have that iconic voice.
I was about to say, I had forgot. I remember always the NASCAR Year in Review VHS tapes. Eli Gold was almost always like the narrator, I guess, if you will. Man, I totally forgot about Eli Gold. I completely lifted him off my list just because I'd forgotten about him.
Well, hey, at least we finally got some diversity going.
There you go. Here's one. I don't know if you'll have this one on your list. Gentleman Ned Jarrett. And I have Ned on here for a couple reasons. Mainly just for just being how talented he was, because Ned obviously was a former racer in kind of NASCAR's infancy, and had been I think Ned won a championship or two, maybe, if you will. I know he had won some races and whatnot. When he came over to broadcasting, and nowadays in modern times, a guy like Ned Jarrett, a former racer or any sport, a former athlete, they're usually a color commentator. They go on there and they give their opinions because they have that experience. Ned came over and a lot of times was a play-by-play or a pit reporter, someone who's not really the opinion guy, but just, giving the straight facts like a typical reporter. And I loved Ned because Ned was just so widely talented. He did a lot of MRN radio, obviously, but did CBS on NASCAR from 79 to 2000, ESPN, NASCAR coverage from 89 to 2000, and just the fact that he could do radio and television so easily, being someone that has done a share of both. They're very different disciplines because on radio you are painting the whole picture, so you got to talk a lot more. Television, the person has the picture in front of them, and the real question is, what can you add to it to make it worth my while to listen to you? So the fact that he could do those and really be a play-by-play, and then there's probably no play-by-play call at the end of a race that will make me just like smile like the 1993 Daytona 500. And thankfully, whoever was the executive producer on, I guess it was CBS, with Dale Jarrett, Ned's son, in the lead, going down the backstretch on the last lap, someone told everybody else, all right, everybody else hush, Ned, call him home. Yeah. And it was like, and it was funny because, it's this great moment. Ned actually went the week after. I guess Rockingham was always the next race, and he went up to Dale Earnhardt because Dale Jarrett had beat Dale Earnhardt, and he went up to Dale Earnhardt and he apologized. He said, I know, it's my job to be professional, and I showed favoritism against you. And Dale Earnhardt looked at him, and I think he gave him a pat on the back and was like, I'm a daddy too. It's okay. And I was just like, man, that clash right there.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember watching that race like it was yesterday, man. And of course, we were Earnhardt fans and pulling for it, but getting to see Ned call him home, and they had the camera on him too, so you see him pumping his fist and all that stuff when he's coming by, and even my dad, who's just diehard Earnhardt, as much as he appreciates father-son stuff, he was like, that's awesome. Glad he got to see that. And I think we saw a little bit of it when Darrell Waltrip got to call Michaels coming to but the father-son thing, you're not going to top that. That was an awesome experience.
That's a different dynamic. And he was a race promoter. He promoted Hickory Motor Speedway for a long time. So, he could drive a race car. He could promote a racetrack. He could announce on radio, announce on TV. Just Ned Jarrett's and another very iconic voice, and also another Ned Jarrett story. So, Martinsville Speedway, Ned Jarrett is pit reporting for MRN, and one of the pit stalls he was assigned was Richard Petty. Well, apparently, I don't know if Ned had ate too many Gutbuster hot dogs or what had happened. Ned had to make a bathroom break, and he thought he was clear because it wasn't supposed to be pit stops. Well, he goes in the restroom to do his business, and Richard Petty makes an unscheduled pit stop, and the guys in the booth can't tell who's down there and who's not. Yeah. They're not checking in with him. He's in the stall doing his business. And, of course, here the play-by-play guy says, Richard Petty's coming down the pit lane. Let's throw it down to Ned Jarrett. And someone else was in the bathroom to recount the story. They said that Ned Jarrett, in the bathroom, called the pit stop. He can't say it. He's having to make it up. Richard Petty in for unscheduled pit stop, making a chassis adjustment, blah, blah, blah. He's down and away off the pit lane, and the guy in the bathroom said, I think Kyle Petty actually corroborated. He said, you know what? He actually pretty much got the pit stop correctly. Calling it from the bathroom. So who else could do that but Ned Jarrett?
Turn the microphone off.
Yeah, I'm about to say, save the flush for after you throw it back to the booth.
Well, they're groaning down there. Ned, you helping them change that tire or what?
Ned Jarrett.
That's awesome.
All right, back to you.
All right, so I guess this will be last one on the top 5 here. I'm going, I could not leave this guy off because he has done so much for so long. I'm going Mr. David Hobbs. Probably open wheel racing is what he's most known for. He did come over and do some NASCAR stuff. He wasn't as well received because the
way he talked, I think.
The way he talked, he didn't have that southern drawl to him there. But did CBS, ESPN, and NBC from the mid '70s. 2017 was his last year. He was another one. He was a former racer. Raced Indy, Formula One, sports cars. Did some, I think, 8 times. Ran the 24-hour Le Mans. Just a lot of FIA stuff. He's actually in the FIA and the Motorsports Hall of Fame. But he did some NASCAR stuff, like I said, radio on CBS as well, NBC. But he was really big when Speed Channel had F1. That's when I think he really kind of got to have the spotlight on him. And I always enjoyed, and now ESPN has it through the Sky Sports Network. But when NBC had it, he worked really well with that team. But being a former driver and of his age, I don't have to be so PC right now. So if something happened on the track and it was somebody's fault, it wasn't very, a lot of the guys now, they have to be very careful what they say, and they can't blame fault. They just, hey, there was an accident. But like if it's blatantly somebody's fault, like he would like straight call them out on TV, and you're not going to say anything to him because it's David Hobbs.
Kind of like Robin Miller does.
Yes, and it was great, and I loved that because he didn't show any favoritism, and he was just very real. It was very raw and very real. But again, he's just one of those guys, man, one of those old heads that's been involved with racing basically his whole life. He's just a wealth of knowledge, but that mind was so sharp, man. He could just throw nuggets at you and remember races from 5, 10, 15 years ago, just like it happened the next day. And when NBC lost the Formula One license, ESPN got it. Like when they did the sign off, I remember watching it. Like he kind of had some little shots towards ESPN. I mean, because I kind of heard him. He'd been involved with it for so long, and then they didn't even offer him a contract, kind of thing. But David Hobbs, and I guess to stick with the movie theme, he was also in the blockbuster Stroker Ace. If you remember that one. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
I will always, one of my favorite David Hobbs' lines is not even from his race announcing. There was a documentary on Netflix about the 24-hour war. It's basically the documentary version of Ford versus Ferrari. And it's talking about Le Mans, and David Hobbs, who ran Le Mans, like you said, was talking on there, and he said something about a section of the track where they had trees, and David was like, oh yeah, they made sure and painted those trees white about 6 feet up so you could see them before you ran into them. It just cracked me up because I did not know David was a former racer. I thought he was just a talker. So
yeah,
that was kind of cool to learn about him. Another last one that I had in my personal top 5 of guys I just love to hear call races was Benny Parsons. Kind of like in the same vein of Ned Jarrett, except Benny did go color commentary style, but Benny was a former champion. He was a little younger than Ned. I remember when Tim Richmond got sick, Benny Parsons got called in to kind of hold that ride down a little bit until Ken Schrader took it over. And then when he transitioned over to full-time announcing, I mean, he was on ESPN, NBC, TNT as a color commentator. He actually had a podcast on CNN. It was the CNN Radio Racing Report podcast. I did not know that about Benny Parsons. And kind of in the same vein as Eli Gold. Eli Gold was the reason so many people listen to NASCAR Live on Tuesday nights. Like I quit listening to it when Eli and MRN parted ways. Benny Parsons had a similar thing over at PRN on Monday nights. Benny Parsons was the person that started Fast Talk on Performance Racing Network, and that was kind of their answer to NASCAR Live. And Benny I just enjoyed hearing his voice, enjoyed hearing him calling a race, and he could be very matter of fact, but he could also be very easygoing, and just loved his personality. My favorite thing would be when it would be like a practice and they would stick him down in the garage, and that's when his personality could really come out and his camaraderie with the guys. And I mean, about all those guys grew up watching guys like Benny Parsons, and I just loved listening to his work. It's one of those things. It sounds weird when you say it, but it's literally the truth. Like a lot of these guys, I just enjoy hearing their voice. Yeah. Their voice is a pleasing sound. It sounds good. It's understandable. Some of them got Southern accents, some of them don't. But I just enjoy hearing them talk.
Yeah, and I think for announcers, for both of us, what how do I want to say it? What makes us kind of gravitate to a certain guy is not necessarily how professional or knowledge, all that kind of stuff. Is like, are you real? Like are you like a real guy, like a true guy? I mean, you can tell like TV and radio, you can tell the ones who are very corporate and just basically sound like they're reading off a script, and you can tell the guys who are like legit fans and they're just telling you what they see kind of thing. And with Benny Parsons, you know, being a former driver and all that stuff, one thing that stood out to me with Benny Parsons was he was never like, he wasn't like the seeking the limelight guy or like using the name or anything. He worked so well with Bob Jenkins and he worked so well with Ned Jarrett, who are both on our list. He was that great, you know, the yin to the yang kind of thing, to where, you know, he could just play off of each other, and together the story was being told. It wasn't being told this way and then told this way. There was no, I mean, you couldn't tell like any kind of feuding or anything. He just worked very well with whoever he was around.
I think Benny Parsons was one of those guys that probably helped, I don't want to say open the door for guys to leave the seat and come in the booth, because I think that door was always there. Mm-hmm. But I think he was one of those ones I can think of that really showed them like, hey, you know, you've got all this knowledge. If you do like this and work toward it to be better, you can be good at this. And for a lot of them, it gives them their best excuse to stay out there as far as, you know, being involved in the sport. Because, I mean, some guys just leave. Like when Harry Gant retired, he first one that comes to mind. When he retired, man, you never saw him at a racetrack again. Yeah. So it's a way for, like, you know, now it seems like it's just commonplace for, like, you know, Jeff Gordon did the announcing for a while. Now he's leaving. Dale Jr. does it now, Jeff Burton. But, I mean, I think Benny helped show some of those guys, like, it's okay, you can do this and, you know, work toward it.
Well, a lot of the former guys, like you hear them like, okay, you know, they're done. And whether it's racing or any other sport, it's okay, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. What am I going to do to feel that rush, that thrill, that adrenaline? And stepping in a booth is that, you know, fill in for a lot of guys, because you know, you can only ride off your name but for so long. But if you're terrible, it's going to be short lived. I don't care how popular or how good of a driver you were or how good of an athlete you were. If you can't, this is a whole different discipline. And so it becomes a new challenge for some of these guys to be as good in the booth as they were on the track.
I will say, not, you know, I'm not gonna bash anybody, but not everybody who's a former racer is a good announcer. No. Some guys, like I know, I went back and listened to Richard Petty try to do TV, and I love Richard Petty. I love who he is as a person. Obviously, great accomplishments. Just wasn't meant to be. Yeah. So not everybody who's a former guy, this is not some given that you can go out here and do it and then turn around and talk about it, because to be able to express yourself, it's hard to do. It's not easy. That's why we have these, behind these lists that we have, there's 10 bajillion other Joes out there that wanted to try to be good at it and just weren't that good at it.
Yes, we'll do a not top 5 list one day, I guess.
Honorable mentions on all times, just real quick hitters. Some of the guys I miss. Mike Dunn, NHRA on ESPN. And I know Mike didn't do it for some extravagant long time, and I know he didn't have some crazy John Force style career, but I really loved that pairing on Sunday afternoons on ESPN2 of Paul Page and Mike Dunn doing the NHRA. And just the way Mike would explain things, like Mike Dunn is the reason I even understand what it means to backfire a supercharger, or the way he could explain certain things. Or one that really got me with Mike Dunn was, I think it was U.S. Nationals when John Force basically took a dive so that Robert Height beat him head to head and got enough points, and it was I think he ended up racing Ashley for the final, whatever. And Mike Dunn was just being matter of fact about it, because they were sitting there like, well, you know, Paul Page is having to be, you know, down the middle. He's like, well, NHRA is going to take a look at the tune-up on the car. And Mike's like, they're not going to find anything in the tune-up, because it wasn't the tune-up. John hung a right on the starting line and got out of the groove. Like, you know, and I was just like you said, he's being real about it. Yeah. He's not you know, throwing some shade on somebody for no reason. He's calling it like he saw it. John Force took a dive.
Absolutely.
I love John Force to death, but he took a dive. Yeah. It was blatantly obvious. Yeah. And Mike called it. Mike had the stones to call him out for it. Right. So that was one of my honorable mentions that I missed. Ken Squire's another one. Ken Squire, obviously, legendary voice on CBS, on NASCAR, TBS. Still, I think, does some of the NASCAR stuff at Charlotte. Ken Squire getting sick is the only reason I got to fill in on that one NASCAR race I got to do PA with Ozzie Altman. So thank you, Ken Squire, for getting sick one time. And then they realized real quick, all right, I don't care what drugs Ken needs. Get his Dayquil in his system, whatever he needs. Get him back to the speedway because the redneck from Burlington ain't got no business being up here. But I got to do it one time.
There you go. You put it on the resume.
Current top fives, or did you have any honorable on-time mentions? I think all your honorables were current guys.
Yeah, I did debate with Ken Squires there for a stint. He's just one of those iconic voices from growing up. But that was really about the only person I really could think of that I would throw in there. I have more current guys, I guess you can say, versus all-timers or guys that are retired because, as we well know, the good announcers, that's a long career, man. So. Most of the guys that I enjoy are still active. So I was just trying to depart from the active versus already retired.
So with our current top fives, I think it's pretty interesting. So many of these guys, some of these guys on my list, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, it wasn't too long ago. These guys would have only been heard at the racetrack, and you probably only would have heard them if you went on a regular basis. Because of streaming, I mean, almost all these guys on my current top five list are guys that are mostly streaming because I can't get to a lot of their races in person. So shout out to streaming. I know some old people don't like race streaming, but I tell you what, I love it because
absolutely
I can see races that I would never be able to financially afford to go to, and it makes me even more of a racing fan.
Absolutely.
So current top five, I will get, well, not current top five. Let me rephrase. Current list unranked announcers that we enjoy. Buddy Payne, why don't you start us off since I started off the all-time
Okay.
list.
I guess I can rank these 5-1, but this is a fresh face when it comes to booth announcing, but it's significant with me, and I'm going to go Clint Boyer. And I know he's only been doing it for a year or two now, but obviously we know Clint's history in racing, NASCAR driver and all that kind of stuff. But Clint, I never was when he drove for RCR, I was a fan, but he was in, mid-pack equipment, so I know he might sneak a race win here and there, but I knew he was never going to win anything there. But as an RCR guy growing up, I was happy to see him there. But I met Clint right when he did start the old Jack Daniels car, the 07. I met him at 311 one time. He was walking around, and some people knew him, some people didn't, whatever, but he was just up there walking around as a fan and stuff, talked to him there, and then he would run, whenever they'd run late models there, super late models there, he would run his car down there. And then, the brief little stint that when we were running our car down in the pits and stuff, it's like standing in the driver's meeting and there's Clint Boyer right there beside me. It was pretty cool. but he was just, away from the NASCAR track, he was just a fan. He was just crazy about the sport just like we are. And just back to that real, being a real guy kind of thing, he is definitely not the corporate dude. He's just a real fan. I mean, he owns his own team in the late models there. But what I love about Clint, especially with the NASCAR stuff, is in the booths. This is just my opinion. In the booths on both Fox and NBC, I think you had the corporate guys like your guy for Fox.
Talking about Mike Joy.
Mike Joy. So Mike Joy to me is just a corporate dude. He sounds like he's reading off a script. Sorry, it's just my opinion. And you have him, and then they'll throw in like a former racer and all that stuff, and it's okay, but it's just not a good group. And then when Clint steps in there, like Clint's like, sounds like he's been hanging out in the campground. He's already got a few pops in him, and he don't care, man. Like he don't care. Like when Clint Boyer's on the mic, like you better have your finger near the dump button. And that I love that about it because it's such a shakeup. I mean, if you can get Jeff Gordon to like gut laugh during a live broadcast, that's awesome. And when they were doing last year during the lockdown stuff, when they were doing the streaming, and he comes in and calls it, that was hilarious. Yes, it was so good it made me watch other people play video games.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because Clint was just hilarious, man, and he was just real. And again, he was one of those. If two guys got together, it wasn't there was contact. Be like, no, he took him out, or no, that was his fault. And I love that aspect about him, that he keeps it light and he keeps it fun. It doesn't have to be like, yes, you need to take your job seriously and all that. I'm not going too crazy, but he makes it fun. Like if I were sitting beside, like me and you sitting beside each other in the grandstands watching the race. Yeah,
that's the way we talk to each other.
That's the way we talk to each other, and to get a good laugh in there. And he's fun to listen to. And me, as not a NASCAR fan, I will watch a few laps of a Fox race to hear Clint Boyer for a little bit. And so that's a pretty big pull.
Oh, man. It was hard to rank them, but first one that comes to my mind for me is the voice of Knoxville Raceway, Mr. Tony Bachhoven. And Tony, I know, has done some work for Motor Racing Network, but, man, I love hearing Tony's work. Tony's got these little lines he will throw in there that will make my pulse go up. Like when Tony Bachhoven is calling a sprint car race and you hear, your race is for the lead.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, it like just hearing those words, I could see on the screen that the race is for the lead.
Yeah.
But Tony Bachhoven adding that in, I'm like, ooh, let me sit up just a little bit more. I love his energy. He is talking fast, but he's not fast and sloppy. Mm-hmm. I know announcers that go fast and they go sloppy where you can't understand what they're saying, and it kind of just sounds like babbling a little bit, and I'm going on and on and on and on, and turn one. Tony's not like that. Tony is speaking faster, but he is clear about it. His excitement is easy to see, and I think one of the things I love about a good race announcer, and I try to do this, I don't always do it, but he's not yelling at me, but I can just tell by the tone of his voice, okay, I need to perk up and pay attention, because Tony's looking at the situation, he's looking at how close people are, and I love the way he does it. So, and I tell you what, I know a lot of people at tracks do that let's go racing thing, but man, when Tony does it at Knoxville, it fires me up a little bit more. So
yes,
Tony Bachhoven had to get one.
He's on my honorable mention list. I'm a big fan of Tony, and I'm glad he's starting to expand a little bit outside of Knoxville. He recently was a part of the Kings Royal call on the live stream, and I'm glad to see him starting to get a few more opportunities like that, because he's definitely deserving. And one thing I really enjoy about him, adding to what you just said, is when he's describing the racing, what he says is actually happening.
Yeah.
So when he says the battle's for the lead, it's not like then you look at the screen and second place is 10 car lengths behind, and they're trying to make something exciting that's not really that exciting. But if it is like a snooze fest, like if the dude is pulling away at the lead, he's finding another battle, and he will talk about the battle for third just as exciting as the battle, if it was for the lead. And he's really good. You can tell, kind of like a behind the scenes thing, you can tell like when a guy has a stat list beside him and got race monitor going on, he's checking lap times and stuff. And he'll tell you, keep an eye on such and such, turning good laps. And then next thing you know, this guy's now entering the screen that you're watching, and he's coming. And he's really good at making you peel your eyes away from the lead to what's going on somewhere else on the track.
Yeah. If you're a cameraman working with Tony Bachhoven, you better be paying attention to what he's saying, because like you said, he's going to find a battle.
Yeah.
So give me another one
absolutely.
on your list.
We'll stay with the streaming action here, and I want to go with Mr. DJ from Dirt on Dirt, Dustin Jarrett.
Yep.
Dustin Jarrett is one of the founding members of Dirt on Dirt, which is now with Flow Racing. Most everything that I could find about him has always been something through streaming. I did see something like he's done some local high school sports and whatnot, but racing specific. It's always been through streaming. One thing I did not realize it was him. I remember listening to this back in the day, but I didn't realize it was him. Was he did the online radio for Lucas Oil Dirt Series way back when, and he's done track announcing at Eldora for the last 6 years. But when Dirt on Dirt, before Flow got involved, when Dirt on Dirt was doing their stream events, he was always on the call. And him, Ben Shelton, a couple of those guys. But Dustin, I really enjoyed him because of the knowledge, and this dude's been to 250 some racetracks.
It's some insane number.
Yeah, it's like 250 racetracks in 17, 18 states or whatever. But he will tell you about the pure start driver and some track in Michigan during the thing, and it's all legit stuff. He just knows this stuff. He just eats the sport like that. He's a very down to earth guy. But he's not the clearest speaker. He's not the most iconic voice, and he makes a mistake now and again. But he's just very down to earth. He's very knowledgeable, and he's another one of those guys that he works great with whoever's around him. Like that Eldora crew, like him and James Essex work just phenomenal off of each other. Him and Ben Shelton, like I just said, if something funny is said, like he'll just crack up right there online. Like he doesn't try to be overly professional on it. And he's another one that I had the good fortune of meeting. Dad and I went to the Pittsburgher 100, and he lives like in that area. And we were walking out. It was a 2-day show. We were walking out Friday, and I'm just knowing him and seeing pictures and stuff of him. I was like, that's Dustin Jarrett. And I just went over, and he was there with his son, and he was just there as a fan. Dirt on Dirt wasn't covering the race or any of that kind of stuff. He was just in the stands as a fan, walking around, just like me and my dad were, and stopped and talked to him, for 15, 20 minutes. Just a cool dude. And he was like telling us like restaurants to check out in the area and all. Just very down to earth guy, knows his stuff, and just a wealth of knowledge.
Ditto on all that. Dustin Jarrett's on my list. I'll give you my DJ story. So I think it was back in 2015, 2016, the Dirt Modified Series I worked for, we went all the way up to Legendary Hilltop in Marietta, Ohio to run a race. And we didn't even get to run the feature race for reasons unknown. The track canceled the show. But that Friday, we did all the preliminaries. So we did hot laps qualifying, and we did all the heat races to try to lock guys in. And DJ was going to help me call the race, and I was psyched up because I'd heard Dustin Jarrett on Dirt and all this stuff, and meet him in person. Super nice guy. I cracked the joke at him for how short he is compared to me. Took it in stride, not no nose up in the air guy, like super chill. It looked like I had a few pieces of papers and notes. That dude looked like he had the Bible. I mean, he had so many notes. And we're sitting there sharing information and stuff. And then we get up to the booth to call the heat races. And he made me want to do even better than I normally could because, I mean, he's Dustin Jarrett. And he was super cool, super easy to work with, no ego. What you see is what you get, not some fake person at all, just a really super nice, down-to-earth guy. And like you said, not some great eloquent voice, not Bob Jenkins or something like that, but he is just a race fan. You would not go to that many racetracks if you weren't a just diehard race fan.
And as much, I mean, dirt racing specifically is his life. I mean, it's his job, Dirt on Dirt. And when they do get that rare off weekend and he doesn't have to call a race or he doesn't have to report on one, at his personal time, he's going to a race somewhere. Yeah. And that's awesome.
I'm going to break away from the dirt streaming because I do have another one in that vein, but I want to throw another one in here. I got a feeling I'm going to surprise you with this one.
All right.
David Croft, Formula One.
Okay.
Don't speak like us, by no means. Obviously. Calling Formula One, you can't call Formula One with a Southern accent. Yes. But I'm going to tell you what, some of those lines he uses when he's lights out and that drag race to the first turn in a Formula One race where like everything crazy happens in the first turn. I love David Croft's cadence. I love his energy he brings with it. And it's like, if his energy is staying up there with something, you're like, you just know, all right, this is something big going on here. And it's wild because he has the least number of drivers to work with. There's only 20 drivers in a Formula One race, and they can get spaced out pretty far along the racetrack. And a lot of times it ends up being, all right, after we've gotten through the first couple of laps, it turns into a strategy game a lot of times. And David Croft can still take that chicken whatever and make it, chicken salad, chicken, Parmesan, whatever it needs to be. So I love hearing David Croft on a Formula One race.
Yes, yeah, Crofty's good, man, and he's been doing it for a long time. And like you said, typically Formula One, by the time you get to about lap 5, things are kind of shook out, and you know who the players are and who aren't. And he makes the strategy and what to be looking for as exciting as that barrel off into turn 1. Yes, he brings the tone down some, but if you don't know anything about Formula One, or if you're watching it as a NASCAR fan, you're like, I don't get this. Why is this exciting? There's no passing or whatnot. If you just turn your mind off and listen to him, he will teach you more about how to watch a Formula One race than any of them out there. He will tell you, okay, this is what you need to start looking for as far as the gaps between this driver and this driver. You'll understand what an undercut is when it comes to pit. You'll understand, okay, why is this guy doing a 2-pit strategy and this guy's doing a 1? And the tire compounds and all this kind of stuff, and like how they conserve. He's just so knowledgeable about how Formula One races are ran and strategy. I've learned a ton from him just listening to him. And I'm going to stay in the Formula One vein. and go to Lee Diffie, because Lee Diffie and Crofty work off each other very well, which, Diffie basically did what Croft did with NBC. And Diffie is road course racing's his thing, man. That's, he started out doing the motorbikes and stuff. And then when Speed Channel really started getting going there, early 2000s, he moved to the States, and he was calling everything from Trans Am to IMSA, Le Mans. He did the motocross. He did so much through them, and then when NBC got the rights, that's the word I'm looking for, the rights for Indy and Formula One, that was their guy. So he went to it, and he did do a little bit of NASCAR, he filled in here and there, for NBC Sports, and he actually did some Olympic stuff too. But F1, that again, him and Croft played so good off each other, and they kept you exciting. Lewis Hamilton could have a 30-second lead, but it was still exciting because you were watching what's going on mid-pack, or all right, is he going to pit? Is he going to do this strategy? Whatever, and it still kept you interested.
Going back to the streaming side of things, I've got to give a bone to Rick Eshelman, voice of the World of Outlaws late models. And for Rick, it's several fold. There's several levels to this onion I'm going to peel. Number one, I like Rick's style calling a race. It's not, the most full of words, I guess you could say. There are people that talk a lot more than he does calling a race, but I like the way Rick will typically do it. I like a lot of his one-liners. You can't teach those one-liners. If you try to fake it, it's painfully obvious, and it's not as funny. Rick's got a ton of those little one-liners in there he will throw in. He's also got great crowd interaction.
Yes.
Rick's the guy that I learned the whole thing of. There's a line some PA announcers like myself will use if there's a lot of downtime. He'd be like, "All right, everybody in the grandstands, who brought your wife with you? Who brought your girlfriend with you? All right, who brought both with you?" Little stuff like that. Or the Simon Says game. He would play the Simon Says game. Who would think to do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Rick does that. And then another thing I love that Rick does, he is a National Touring Series announcer. In that level of racing, you got a pretty fair amount of clout, which means I'm in the booth, get out of my way, this is what I do for a living. And what Rick does, if you go back and watch World of Outlaw late model highlights just on YouTube or wherever, if you watch them on Dirt Vision, Rick is open enough where a lot of these tracks that they go to, obviously he is the anchor and he's the main guy calling it, but he is nice enough to let these local guys help him. Some local guys don't want to. Some local guys, when the touring series comes in, they want to take that race off and go sit in the stands and watch and enjoy. I used to do that at Ace. Some of the guys would ask, "Do you want to help me?" And I'd be like, "No, I want to go sit and just watch because I got to call the mini stock race after this." But Rick will at least let him do that. And whether it's a World Outlaw race or an extreme dirt car race or whatever, just the fact that he does that has to come from him. And as an announcer, if I was track announcing at Livonia or wherever, and World of Outlaws come to town there one time a year or whatever, and Rick Eshelman's like, "You want to help me do this?" I'd be like, yeah, you dang right. It might not result in nothing, but I get to, Rick's nice enough to do that. Not everybody in this business is nice enough to be a good neighbor and do that. So I appreciate that about Rick.
One thing with Rick, bouncing off of that, is he will, if the local guy does want to be involved, he'll let him make the call to green. So when they're coming off of turn 4, taking the green flag, he'll let the local guy do it. And then if they're coming to the checkered, if it's going to be a local guy that wins, not one of the tour regulars, he'll let the guy make the call, because that sense of local pride kind of thing, you hear it out of the local guy's voice much more than you're going to hear it from the tour guy's voice. And another thing with Eshelman, outside of the announcing, is how invested he is with the World of Outlaws. I remember a couple years ago, they had that 2-day deal down at Smoky Mountain, and we got there super early because on the back stretch, it's first come, first serve, and that place usually packs out. So we were going to set our seats and kind of see where we wanted to sit, and then we're going to leave and then come back for the day. And we're there, and I mean, like, gates open at maybe 1, 2 o'clock, something like that. Haulers are starting to come in. Rick's there opening up the gate and waving in and parking the haulers. You know, he's just that invested. We've been to a number of tracks where he's right there with the ladies who are selling the programs. He's just walking around with them, and he just loves the sport. He loves the World of Outlaws and the branding, and he does so much to help promote it. And I would definitely give that to Eshelman. So I'm going to go with my next one. I'm going to do Eshelman's, I guess you can say, counterpart, and I'm going with Mr. James Essex. And I know he's either love him or hate him for some folks, but I love that guy to death. So whereas Eshelman's more the Outlaws, obviously, Essex does Lucas Oil, and he's been Lucas Oil announcer since the inception of the tour. He's originally was a track announcer from Brownstown when the Lucas Oil Forrest Lucas said he wanted to run a series up against the Outlaws. You know, there's enough late model racing, we can have 2 sustainable national tours, and pegged Essex to do it, and he's been doing it ever since. And with James Essex, what I love the most about James Essex is you talking about somebody who is legit a fan, and he does not try. He doesn't try to be an announcer, in my opinion. He's just talking the entire time. But you know, Eshelman's got his joke one-liners, and Essex has got his one-liners, the "Oh babies, the please stay green." No one in the world says caution the way he says caution.
Yeah, the caution is out.
I know there's W's in caution, but he's got the knowledge, and he'll throw you some nuggets here and there. But he's just like, he genuinely gets excited when something crazy is going on in the race. When it's 5 laps to go, and Davenport puts it on the cushion, and he drives from 5th to 1st. Like, you can't understand half of what he's saying because he's that excited, like he's never seen this happen before. If a local guy wins or whatever the case may be. And he is a wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes to that like Midwest, I guess only into Indiana, Ohio, and then, you know, out west a little bit. Like, he knows like a lot of those guys in the history very, very well. But he's not throwing you the same nuggets as, you know, like Eshelman will about, you know, the 2014 championship came down to this. Like, he doesn't like have that like sitting in the memory bank, but he'll throw you something from like the 1980s that nobody in the world knows. But he is just such a true fan, and he laughs at himself when he makes mistakes. But him at Eldora, I love those Eldora pay-per-views because he's great, and he gets excited, and gets that guttural, and he has to catch his breath and stuff. He's a treat, and he's funny, man. He'll like I say, laughs at himself. He picks on other guys, and he does a fantastic job for Lucas Oil.
Essex is the first announcer I ever heard reference a driver's age.
Okay.
That is something that I never thought of as an announcer, to reference someone's age. And to this day, I still typically won't. I'll typically only, and I think most people do this, they'll typically only refer to someone's age or whereabouts, whether if they're really young or if they're in their 60s and 70s, how they're doing it. Most of the time, most guys just don't do it.
Right.
And James talked about on a podcast that he did where he would go around and get everybody's birthdays. He said, now sometimes I would mess it up and call them 52 when they were 53 or something like that. But I always remember hearing that, and I was just like, man, that's different. Like,
yeah.
I don't hear anyone else do it. So I do like the originality.
But the other thing that I forgot to mention before about Essex, that it's a small little like underlying thing, but I've noticed it and I greatly appreciate it for him, is whenever they're coming around for the 4-wide salute, he does not have a 4-wide salute call. He doesn't try to make one up. He doesn't try to get something that rhymes or like some of these other guys do. When they come around and he tells the fans to stand up, he just presents it to them and lets the fan have that moment. He's like, you know, here they are, guys, the greatest drivers in the world coming at you 4-wide. Give them a wave, you know, tip of the hat. And then he backs off, he's quiet, and lets the crowd just enjoy it, taking pictures, you know, waving the hats or whatever. And I love that about him, that he just presents the information and then lets the person have the moment instead of trying to force anything.
Absolutely. Another one, this one guy on my list is a newer guy. I have not heard him until this year. But as far as someone I just love listening to, and I got a feeling if he stays on Flow Racing long enough, I'm gonna keep enjoying him, is Chet Christner. And I think the first time I heard Chet was doing one of the West Virginia Motor Speedway shows, and I was just like, man, that guy's got a good voice. Mm-hmm. Like I like hearing him announce. And then when I think it was Pennsylvania Sprint Week, the races that were on Flow, sometimes he would do them instead of the track guy, which I appreciate. Nothing against track guys, but Chet's on a different level. He also did a lot of the Southern National races this year, and he does. I think he kind of just bounces around to whatever's on Flo's schedule, but I like his delivery. He's got some of those sneaky little one-liners that he'll throw in, the flipping the fluff, the little cute little terms to describe things, and it's just off the dome. You can tell he's not reading it. It's just calling it what he's seeing. Kind of like, it almost reminds me of the old Jim Ross in old World Wrestling Federation. Not that we like wrestling anymore, but you would hear Jim Ross throw out little terms like, "Oh man, that was bowling shoe ugly," or if someone got hit with a low blow, "Oh man, there went his reproductive efforts for the night." Just simple stuff, and you could tell it was just coming natural because you can. Educated race fans like us, I say educated in a very loose sense, but you can tell real quick whether it's natural or it's being forced. Right. And Chet ain't forcing it. I love the way he does it. I hope Flo keeps him employed because I love his announcing style.
I'm growing with him and becoming a fan, and I like it because at some of them, like when we were at Beckley the other week, we couldn't hear him.
Yeah, he was just on the pay-per-view.
He was just on the pay-per-view, so you couldn't hear him at the track. And now knowing that, hearing him call, watching something on Flo and him calling the race, like it's a little hilarious stuff. I'm like, man, I can't believe he said that. And I don't know if it was Beckley was just a standoff or if some tracks can't hear him. But I remember one, it was during the Southern Nationals, and I think it was like the Modifieds or the Sportsmen or something were out there, and like we're waiting for the late model race. And these dudes, I mean, it took them 6 times to get started. And like on like the 5th or 6th one, Chet comes on. It's like, all right, guys, we got to get this together. We got hot laps at I-75 tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And just not being afraid to say that. And it's a dig, but it's funny. It's very lighthearted and stuff. I was like, all right, that's cool. I'll give you that. That's pretty funny.
Absolutely. Then we break into honorable mentions. I got a few on my list. I got a feeling we might have a few of the same ones. Had to have Johnny Gibson on there. Johnny's a little higher pitched voice, so not the most pleasing tone for me to listen to, but wealth of knowledge. He is an encyclopedia on sprint car racing. You hear him on a podcast when he can just kind of spit it out left and right. Johnny is a wealth of knowledge, been around it so long, and also with Johnny, impeccable attendance record. I mean,
over 2,000.
He has made the choice. Even when he's sick, he can out announce a whole bunch of people in the country. Johnny Gibson is he's definitely a heck of an announcer. A little higher pitched voice, so to me it's not as pleasing to listen to. But I mean, Johnny, like when you hear Johnny Gibson go quick time in qualifying, it's awesome. I don't like when other people copy it.
Yes.
Be your own announcer. That's another thing all these guys will usually tell you. You got to be your own announcer.
Right.
Don't copy Johnny Gibson.
Right.
Only Johnny Gibson is Johnny Gibson. But, pretty good on the video game stuff too. So definitely had to throw a bone to Johnny Gibson.
I'll tell you, you're talking about the copying him stuff. So many people, I mean, his iconic 4-wide call, the 4-wide salute call. I was at Carolina Speedway down in Gastonia, and they had, it was maybe USCS sprint cars. It's like a little 360 sprint car series down there. And the guy there like did his 4-wide salute like word for word, and like a few people in the crowd were like booing. That's like, no, you don't copy, especially that, that's iconic. Johnny came up with that. But yeah, Gibson, he was number 1 on my current top 5. And it's just his background, man. Like I said, he's from Pennsylvania and then moved out to Indiana and just started out selling programs with the Orla Outlaws. And then like one night, the announcer, they were going through like announcer shifts, and a lot of like the tour and stuff back then, they just let the local announcer call their, the outlaw race. And the track guy saw Johnny there, and he's selling programs, doing this thing, and he's taking notes just as a fan. And he said, well, have you ever called a race before? He said, no. He said, well, come up in the booth. And he said, I'll let you call a heat race. So he called the first heat race, and he gets offered the job after that, and has been doing it for Knoxville. They gave him that plaque. It was like over 2,000 straight.
Something crazy.
Something like that. Like hasn't missed a race and stuff. And one thing I love about Gibson, like I said, wealth of knowledge. And I mean, he memorizes like all the sponsors and just rattles them off. But I like how he includes the fans like with the music. Like whenever something happens, as soon as he gets on talking, music's playing, and it keeps the crowd. So if it's when they're lining up for the 4-wide, music's playing. When the heat race is about to start and they're lining up behind the car, NASCAR. Music's playing, and it's a very wide array of music, and it's, songs everybody knows, and it gets you pumped up. It keeps you involved, and I love that. And he's been dedicated to the one discipline. I don't know, like he outright says, I'm not a NASCAR fan. I don't know of anything else that he has done outside of sprint car racing, but
Chili Bowl maybe. I think he did a couple of Chili Bowls. Johnny Gibson was the first guy I ever seen use the some people call it a cough button, a dump button, a mute button. When I worked with him at Charlotte, I noticed that, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, if Johnny Gibson's announcing, he wears a headset, and he's got this little blue box, and it's got a little white button on it. It's what we use on our streaming thing, and it's basically just a mute button. Mm-hmm. And with Johnny, he might finish the heat race or something, and he would hit that, and he would give himself time to gather his thoughts, so he would not sound like he was searching or going, and I did appreciate that about him, about how he's just, everything's with a purpose. And like you said, if we're not talking, we're hitting music. We're not sitting here just floating around.
And how many times watching the stream have we text each other when they forgot to turn the microphone off? And you hear what they really say.
What the heck's going on out there? Exactly. They throw some expletive out there.
Yeah, there's always that.
Oh, man. You go ahead. Throw another one in there.
Honorable mentions. I'll probably have more for the current guys, like I said, than the retired dudes. I'm going to go Shane Andrews with the big block modifieds, and he did a lot of stuff on Speed Channel back in the day, but now he's just specific. I think he still does the Mav TV has it, the Motorsports Hour or something like that.
Yeah.
He does that with them, but I guess nowadays you would say he's just iconic for the big blocks, and I really enjoy him. Recurring theme, wealth of knowledge and all that kind of stuff, which you obviously have to have that no matter what you're doing. But I like how he's good at telling a story as well, and he's just a funny dude. Like every track when they go to, he has a different nickname for the flagman, and it's like you got to catch it, man. Like it's just some little quick jabs here and there. But down at World Finals, man, he works in great with Gibson and Eshelman, and if you don't live in that area of the country, you don't really know big blocks unless you're just a fan, and you have to watch it through a streaming. So, and I think he understands that. So when we get to hear him when he comes down south, he's telling you everything, and by the time you get done at the World Finals weekend, like a lot about the big block modifieds, and it's all because he understands. All right, this isn't my typical audience. I've got to present this a different way than I would at like Ransomville, where they run all the time, or one of these tracks, Land of Legions or Legends, excuse me. But I enjoy him. He has a very unique sound to his voice, and he's one of those, if there's nothing to say, he's not saying it. He's letting the racing do the talking, and then when things die down, then he'll tell you, okay, this is what we just saw under the caution. So Shane Andrews, I'm a big fan of him.
I'll throw a bone to our buddy Lenny Baticki, and it might be for a few different reasons. I enjoy Lenny's work at Summer Shootout at Charlotte, and pit reporting for Pit Row TV, Speed Sport TV Network. And Lenny taught me a lot. He's taught me about 10 bajillion things as far as an announcer, but one of the biggest things he taught me, I was following him around one night. I was his cameraman, and Tony Stevens had told me, he said, you follow him around, you're going to pick up things that you need to know. And one of the things that I always appreciate about Lenny is if a guy got in a wreck and pulling the car back in the pits, mostly asphalt races, Lenny will not force the interview. Lenny will go in and he'll find the guy and he'll get a gauge of, all right, is this guy or this driver ready to make a comment, or are they a little too hot and going to shake me off? And Lenny would let him shake you off. There are some people I know. There's a lot of people I know who are like, we got to get this comment. We got to get the comment. Just stick the microphone in their face. Just throw it in there. Yep. And Lenny's the one that really taught me, like, no, you need to be the one to make the decision of, does this guy, do I shove the microphone in his face, or do I pull it back and hold back a little bit? Yeah. Because you really can't go back and get it. So it's kind of like you either get it now or you just lost the opportunity. So Lenny taught me that. And then also Lenny taught me about identifying race cars on the track with colors and position. And I think Ken Squire had taught him this trick. So he passed it down where he was like, when you're identifying a car, he said you can say sponsors and all that other jazz all you want. He said, but the first thing you need to tell me to do is what color is the car and where's it out on the racetrack? Because to anybody sitting in the stands that don't know no better, that's the easiest thing you could point out. The white car over in turn number 2, and then you can rattle off whatever you want. And just that basic thing, you would think it'd be common sense knowledge, but there's not a lot of guys that teach people how to announce in a professional manner. So I like Lenny's work for a lot of reasons, but I think I put him on here just because of everything he's taught me, and I'm hoping and praying anybody that works with him at Pit Road TV on the Speed Sport thing that I get to be a small part of once in a while, I just pray that anybody that works on that crew that wants to be on air just soaks up what he has like a sponge, because he does it in a good professional way. Because you as an announcer in that situation, you can make guys look bad all you want. You really could. And you could take advantage of them, and you will hurt yourself as far as being a member of that community. Those guys need to have some sort of trust in you. And I think, anybody that works with him has that. So Lenny's a personal favorite. One thing I've always appreciated about Lenny is his level of diversity. I know now he's doing primarily the Charlotte stuff, but I've seen video clips on Facebook or heard something on the radio, and he's called just about everything I think you can call from. I think when you interviewed him a while back, like, you kind of got to start doing the BMX, the bike stuff. Yeah. But I've seen him like asphalt late models, dirt late models, sprint cars, a local race at Fayetteville one time. Of course, everything that Charlotte does between the legend cars, monster trucks, NASCAR. When they run the thing the week before the World Finals, where it's like 15 classes of cars out there. He's diversity. He can call just about anything, but he takes the notes and has a nugget to say about everybody, and I really appreciate that about Lenny. I will say, can I throw another Lenny story? Absolutely. Okay, so Lenny did this for me. I thought this was funny. So we were working a race at Tri-County Motor Speedway up in Granite Falls. It was a car store race, and then they had a support division race afterwards, limited late models. And they just wrecked like hell. There ain't no better way to put it. Those guys and girls, they were just out there tearing it up. And me and Lenny had gone, because they ain't going to make pit stops, it's a 30-lap race. Me and Lenny went to the backstretch, and I was getting shots. Well, in one of the shots, wreck happens right in front of me, and the hood comes flying off one of the cars and actually comes at me. And I'm getting the shot, but I'm backing up. And I think Lenny actually pulled me a little bit, like, doofus, back up. But I get the shot, and Lenny is in front of the camera, and he said, I'll tell you what, our own cameraman, Tyler Williams, had a great view of that. Tyler, what'd you see? And he stuck the microphone around and let me get a little comment in there. And I wasn't quite ready for it, but I did it. And then later on, the race had to be called because of darkness. So we go to the front stretch, and because it's getting called by darkness, somebody's upset that they didn't win, yada, yada. And before Lenny did the interview, Lenny muted the microphone. I was standing right there with the camera waiting. Lenny muted the microphone and was talking directly to her, like, calm down a little bit. I know you're upset. I'm going to ask you a question. Give me a good professional answer. Most other announcers would just be like, here, tell me what you're feeling, and just let them spout out and just, volcano blast it and just sound like a real DA. So he at least gave him a shot to tidy it up a little bit before you get on this microphone. Yes, and that's probably because he had an experience to where he didn't do that, and he learned from it. Yeah. A couple other honorable mentions. I'll just rattle these off real quick. A couple of pit road guys don't get as much love, I guess, in the big light, but I always enjoyed was Steve Post. Just a real quick snippet of Steve Post. That's another one. He was on Open Red, I believe. And of course, the radio stuff that he's done, but he's another one to where off weekend he's going to a race somewhere. And I remember he said one thing that he thoroughly enjoyed was being able to travel and hit up all these different tracks, not necessarily NASCAR tracks, but whenever they were in town, for a NASCAR track, they'd get there, Thursday or Friday, get everything set up, and then he was looking to find a local track, dirt track or asphalt track to go to on a Friday, Saturday night, and he just loves that weekly racing support division kind of stuff, and I thought that was really cool. I appreciated that for him. Another radio guy, just I loved his voice and his delivery and everything, was Doug Rice. Yeah. I think he was always fun to listen to.
And this last one, he's kind of a corporate guy, but he's been in it for so long, and he does have some life to him outside of some of the other corporate guys. And for that, I appreciate just his longevity. It was Alan Bestwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you the only other one I had. I just wanted to hit real quick. Someone that impressed me, and I'd like to see if he keeps doing it from that SRX series, since Alan Bestwood was play-by-play. My favorite guest color commentator, Hinchtown.
Okay.
Hinchtown got on. I think he did the one at Slinger, the little quarter-mile track, where I think Paul Tracy wrecked half the field, and then half the field wrecked Paul Tracy, and it was just they were just beating the snot out of each other. Yeah. And I was listening to it. I was like, oh man, old Hinchtown can announce.
Okay.
And I don't know how many years he's got left behind the wheel. Yeah. I mean, Helio Castroneves made it look like you can race till you're 60. Right. But I really liked his style. They did a thing with SRX that I liked. They had a lot of different color commentators. Danica wasn't that good. No. I'm sorry. No. Nice girl and all, whatever. Never met her personally. Didn't like her as an announcer. Dario was okay, but I really liked Hinchtown. Yeah. James Hinchcliffe as an announcer. I'd like to see if he comes back and does that next summer. Okay. Because he injected some cool life into it.
Cool.
I'd like to see him out there driving.
Yeah,
maybe he can take Willie T. Ribbs' spot back there, or Michael Waltrip. God, he could take Michael Waltrip's spot. I'm not a Michael Waltrip fan.
Yeah, I think he's going to be in the not top 5 list.
So, the other thing we did was we talked about if we could put together a custom crew to work an event. And time is not a factor. You can put together any trio that you wanted. We kind of said, 2 guys in the booth, 1 down in the pits. I think we both agree that Eldora crew is tough to beat. Of Essex, Jarrett, and Shelton, and where they are. Essex and Jarrett are great in the booth. Jarrett can do pit stuff, but I love him in the booth. But Ben Shelton is a good victory lane interview. He's good in the pits. Cameraman doesn't have to be that very big. He's not very tall or whatnot.
Just for the hair.
Just for the hair. But that Eldora crew is tough to beat regardless.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had some dynamic duos, if you will, and I know we already kind of hit on a few of those, with Jenkins and Page and all. I really enjoyed Hobbs and Lee Diffie and all, but so this is my custom crew. I would love to see this because we have talked about this. I wonder why this has never happened. And so I'm just going to throw it out there and we'll go from there. So here's my custom crew. It's going to be Rick Esselman and James Essex in the booth.
Okay.
And pit road reporting is going to be my man T-Bone because you should get to experience this at the World 100. And we have always talked about these big, your true, I know everybody tries to have a crown jewel these days, but your true crown jewels, and there's not a bigger one than the World 100 in dirt late model racing. But you've got the drivers from both series there. And there have been talks about they were trying to do a race of champions kind of thing to where you see the top 10 outlaw guys and the top 10 Lucas Oil guys, just them, 20 dudes at a track and just go at it. Just as fun, like an exhibition. Obviously, it'd be money race. It won't be a points race, but just put somebody on the line and let's just see the best drivers versus the best drivers. We essentially we get that at an Eldora or wherever. But I would just love to see World 100, biggest race. You've got the best outlaw guys. You got the best Lucas Oil guys. They're all there everywhere. Let's get the outlaw announcer and let's get the Lucas Oil announcer. Put them together because the times have changed a lot with those two series. They used to kind of. Whenever it's outlaw race, they wouldn't even say the word Lucas Oil, or they'd say national champion. Tour and all this stuff. But finally, they're kind of pulling their heads out and they're working together for the betterment of the sport as a whole versus trying to pump my brand over your brand. And it's getting better. It's a slow roll, but it's getting better. But I would just love to see those two guys. I don't think there's any animosity or hatred there. They talk about each other in a positive manner. I would love to see both those guys in the booth, calling their drivers, kind of thing, because I'm sure there'll be some snips and some snaps and some jabs at each other, but all in light fun. And then my man T-Bone doing all his pit road reporting. You get to enjoy that because if that happens, I'm going to be in the stands, my man, watching it.
I would love to have a headset on for that one.
Yes.
I went with Paul Page and Benny Parsons up top with Ned Jarrett on pit road. I loved when I went back and did research and listened to Ned Jarrett pit reports that were not the Martinsville Speedway concession, the bathroom at Martinsville
You're making the old guy
Speedway.
walk up and down pit road, Tyler.
But I love the way Ned did the pits. I always loved Benny Parsons on color, and I waxed poetically about Paul Page plenty as far as a play-by-play.
Absolutely.
That would have been a cool one to see because you wouldn't have seen it because Paul Page was open wheel, Benny Parsons was strictly NASCAR, and Ned Jarrett was pretty much strictly NASCAR. So that was one that it would have never happened in real life, but in fantasy life, we'll just throw them all together. Substitute Paul Page for Degum. I mean, you know what? Just leave it as Paul Page. Paul Page, Benny Parsons, Ned Jarrett as far as an all-time. But it's also hard to try to put them together because you got to have chemistry. Yeah. There are times when we've heard races where it's like the guys are kind of butting heads. They don't quite have that chemistry. They don't know when to pick up and the other one's putting down. So there is a lot of stock in guys that can work together and be hospitable enough or be charitable enough with the time where they're not sitting there trying to eat each other's heads when they're trying to talk. So
the ability just to play off of each other instead of trying to force anything. Just if you present something, and I'm just going off what you said, because as these guys are talking, they're already thinking in their head what they want to say next. But if if this guy says something different or something happens on the track, the ability to change on the fly and follow up what you just said, that plays a big role, because you can tell the guys who know I'm going to get this point out and it doesn't make any sense.
All right, so now we got some off the cuff stuff.
Oh yes, my favorite.
About to say
favorite segment that we do. Catch you on without any preparation.
I'm gonna catch you too. I got a few in my dome for you.
Okay.
All right. Buddy loves. I think he just loves making me say a lot where I'm having to think. So fire away number one.
As I don't say it. All right. I jotted down 4 this time, so this is in no particular order. This is in no particular order whatsoever. But all right, this is a completely shift and change. But so next year, Formula One and NASCAR both debuting new cars for various reasons. And your mind and opinion off of what you've read, seen, testing, all that stuff so far, which new car is going to have the greater impact for said sport?
Ooh. Aesthetically, NASCAR, performance, Formula One.
Okay.
Just right off the dome. I think the big part of NASCAR doing their thing is the aesthetic. They pulled out that car tomorrow all those years ago, and the dang thing, every single one of them looked alike. And after a few years, someone finally, with a brainstem over there, realized, oh crap, it does matter what the cars look like. And they were too far in the hole to get out of it. And they've every move they've made with the body since then has been to try to get it to look more like the car on the street and yada yada. So I think that's the real whole push behind the whole next car for NASCAR is just the aesthetics. So I think that Formula One, it's all about the performance, and I still prefer the Formula One model. I am not a fan of this whole garbage nonsense of buying my chassis from the sanctioning body. I don't like it. I hear their arguments they make, but to me, it's like, all right, well, that's like slot car racing. Yeah. I pick up the car at the front, I pay my money, boy howdy, we'll see how this goes. You and I know in our agreement that we love that aspect of Formula One. That, yeah, there are some components that are multiple team runs, Ferrari parts or Honda parts or whatever, but it is still a constructor. That's gone from NASCAR. Yeah. With this new car, and maybe it's been gone for a while, and I just don't want to admit it. But that's my off the cuff one on that.
Okay,
one.
All right.
I'll give you one off the cuff. Since we were in the announcer vein, okay. I'm going to throw back on that one. Announcer that you loved to hate.
Loved to hate.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh, there's so many.
And it doesn't have to be racing. It doesn't have to be racing.
It doesn't have to be racing?
Yeah, it can be.
Joe Buck.
Okay. I'm not a fan of Joe
Buck. That's easy. That was like the lowest hanging fruit we've ever had on anything. Joe Buck. Oh, gosh. Man, NASCAR, though. Or NASCAR.
Just racing in general.
Racing in general. God, I just love to hate. Man.
That's a tough one.
I hate the corporate guy. I hate the one that they bring in there, and he's suit and tie at the racetrack, and he's afraid to say his own opinion, and you can tell it. And there's a handful of guys like that. Like, my opinion, Mike Joy. And Mike Joy, he has moments to where he's good, and I enjoy, and he's adding to the story. And I know he's been doing it forever and all this stuff. But when all the mess went down, and I'm not trying to go off on a tangent here, when all the mess went down with Bubba Wallace and the garage incident, and I'll just leave it at that, how quickly he jumped onto, I have to do what everyone, quote unquote, wants me to do and say right here without doing any sort of, you're a journalist at heart, without doing any sort of research, journalism, and jumping all that, and just that facade of mess that they did at the beginning of the next race. I lost all respect for that dude. And again, I know he's been in the game for a long time, and he's done some good. I'm not saying, he's been riding the coattail this entire time, but I just hate corporate guy, and that's for any sport.
I was going to go Bob Harris from Duke. I hate, because I didn't like Duke, so naturally I hated their play-by-play because all the calls went against Duke.
Of course
so
they did.
Bob Harris, Dick Vitale, and that same thing.
Oh, yes.
Could not stand, still can't stand Dick Vitale.
Oh, baby.
Oh, shit, oh, baby, man.
All right.
Give me another one.
Give me another one. Oh, man. Okay, so far this year, we were, into early August. So far this year. And
Golly, where'd the year go?
Yeah. We're not locked down anymore, bro.
Well,
not yet again, I guess.
Yeah, not yet again.
All right, so far up to this point this year, and it can be driver, it can be race, it can be something that's happened, whatever. But so far this year, what has been your biggest surprise, good and bad, racing? And I will leave it wide open, whatever discipline you want to choose. If you want to talk about a specific race, a driver, accomplishment, anything.
That's a good one.
Biggest surprise, good. Biggest surprise, bad.
Good, Helio Castroneves' performance at Indy 500.
Okay.
I think me and a lot of other people saw Helio on the entry list, not in a Penske car, not in an Andretti car, not in a Ganassi car. Man, I know Helio loves racing, and I know he wants to be out there, but does he really have a chance of winning or even showing respectable? Because, I mean, he's a Spider-Man, he's Helio Castroneves. And the fact that he went out there and got the job done, and another guy that we talk about loving that raw emotion. There was no greater raw emotion than his celebration winning that thing. But that was my biggest surprise. It was just like, man, that car was competitive. If it had a shortcoming, Helio covered it up, lost the lead, got it back. I didn't expect him to do it. I thought maybe the time had gone by a little bit. He's a little bit older. The car's not as good, but I mean, the driver made the difference up, whatever, if there was a difference, and that's probably my favorite one as far as a surprising thing. I'm trying to think of a bad one. Gosh, I just don't know. I think I'm really surprised my guy in NASCAR, Brad Keselowski's leaving Team Penske. And I found out, it came out later why, because he wanted some ownership stake, and Penske was not willing to offer it. Roush Fenway was. Okay. To me, and maybe I'm just short-sighted, I don't see, I look at it the way Junior Johnson used to look at it about making money in racing. You want to make a little fortune in racing, start with a big one.
Big fortune, yeah.
I don't, I don't have that foresight to see where that's worth a lot. But you know what? I guess he does, because he took the deal. It's one thing if you're Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart, I think, got 49% of Stewart-Haas or something like that, right at about half. Maybe he did get the full half. Keselowski's not getting that. He's getting a smaller percentage. It's a minority stake. It's small enough where they're not putting his name on the team. So that one, I'm like, I don't see that, but good for him. He got what he wanted. Someone offered him what he wanted.
Yeah, and how neat for him to drive two of the most iconic cars in NASCAR.
Yeah, the 2 and the 6. That's pretty wild, right there. So yeah, okay. Daggone, I had another one off the cuff for you, and I gotta bring it back. Oh, would Scott Bloomquist make a good announcer?
Good gosh, man. He don't even make a good interview.
Well, some of those ones he's got some quips.
If you got about 30 minutes and a heavy duck mutton, maybe. No. Scott Bloomquist is that guy to where you need to do the interview with the cameras off, take notes, and then when it's done, then go flip through your notes and write down, this is what he said. It just took him 30 minutes to say it. I think you can tell, man, like if it's a quick, after qualify or after a heat race and they pull him in for like a 2-sentence question, he can handle that. But if it's something where there's some meat to it, he stops and thinks in front of you and then he thinks about the answer. He definitely doesn't have one loaded up. That is one thing I will say about him. He's just not going to give you the taking a day at a time kind of BS answer there. He's going to think about it, but no, he would make a terrible announcer.
I appreciate your honesty.
It would be very slurry.
Oh God, yeah.
Lots of dumb buttons.
We were testing. All right.
The tires.
Give me another one because I just thought of another one for you. So you go. You give me one.
I got 2 more.
All right.
Okay. We'll stick with that then, guys. This did kind of come from the Bloomquist situation, I guess you could say. As a fan, and whether you pull for the guy or not, but whoever is like the guy and has been the guy in whatever said discipline, I guess you can do all sports as well. Would you rather see that person who's kind of the face and has been the face of this sport, would you rather see him ride off in the sunset, go out on top, a la Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl retiring, or would you rather see him just do it till he physically can't anymore, or, God forbid, something happened during said sport, but would you rather see them kind of go out like still being the man and always I wonder how much longer they could have done it, or let them just do it? And do you appreciate that because, hey, they're doing what they love even though they're not as good as they used to be, or, man, this is really tarnishing their legacy? What do you think is the better route?
Probably the latter. Probably doing it till you literally can't do it no more.
Okay.
Because the what if is a question that you just, it's almost like it gets worse the longer it goes. I'll give you an example of it. So a lot of people said this about Brett Favre, the Green Bay Packers quarterback. Brett needs to hang it on up and go out with some respect. And not condoning what Brett did at all. I think Brett kind of put every organization in a bad spot where he's like, I don't know, he's being too wishy-washy and they need a commitment. But beside the point, by the time Brett was done, I think that last year in Minnesota, it was just like, okay, yeah, you're out of gas. But if he'd have went ahead and retired in Green Bay and just handed it on off, you wouldn't have never known. And sometimes with racing, you will get that little last second little flare up right there at the tail end. And you don't always get it, but sometimes you will get it. That one last great performance that will come out, and it'll kind of it'll give you another appreciation. Matt Kenseth had that happen his last year at Gibbs. He was getting shown the door. They were going to bring Eric Jones up, and he didn't really have anywhere to go for the next year. And he, I think, won a race at Phoenix. And it was kind of his last gasp when Matt Kenseth, not an emotional guy, got emotional. Dale Jr., who he came in with, they both came in as rookies at the same time. Even he acknowledged, like, yeah, man, he got one for the old guys. And it was just like you kind of just knew. I mean, Dale Jr., the last couple of years of his career, he wasn't winning races like he had before early in his career, but you knew at the end there was no gas left in the tank. So I think I prefer that just for my own sake,
Well, okay, for the older guys who do like stay on, for a while, do you think that hurts their legacy at all? And I'll give you a couple examples to kind of go off of. So Richard Petty, he's king of NASCAR, 200 wins, but let's face it, he struggled.
Stayed way too long.
Mightily there at the end. In the dirt world, Billy Moyer just like randomly announces an entire retirement mid of the year. And like you said, he had, a flare up here and there, like where, he had a good showing at a big event. It wasn't his, local show at a big event, the Topless 100, almost wins it the other year and stuff. But for the most part, he's not battling for the lead at Eldora and Knoxville and all this kind of stuff. And heck, he don't even race some of those bigger tracks because of the speed factor and whatnot. And we're kind of starting to see it now with Bloomquist, where he's starting to make shows and stuff like that. Do you appreciate the fact that they're still out there, or you're like, man, this is going to hurt their legacy some?
I appreciate this still out there.
Okay.
Because for me, and not everybody's the same, but for me, I feel like, you know what? Once they're gone, within a year or two, I forget about that stuff.
Okay.
Unless they do something dastardly, criminal, something just egregious. They go out there and try to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
That's hurting your legacy.
Yeah.
To me, it's their life.
Yeah.
I mean, we know now in hindsight that Richard Petty stayed in way too long. I think his last win was 84, was when he got the 200th win, and he didn't retire till the end of 92. And he almost got hurt. He almost got killed a couple times because he shouldn't have been out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's their life. I mean, it's and I don't want to say it's all they know, but in our Bible study, we've looked at we've gone through this book called The Search for Significance. And it's like you can't help but find your significance sometimes in earthly things. Mm-hmm. And for them, that is their thing. And for a lot of them, they're still having fun doing it. You know, it's not a chore. It's not like you're still mowing the grass at 85 years old when you done cut 3 toes off and you got a grandson that'll come do it for you. Like, you know, it's just, and every situation is different. I mean, I don't know if I'm that emotionally invested in somebody where I would. Maybe if I was more emotionally invested, I would. Okay. You know, like if Michael Jordan had come off that last year with the Wizards, where it was pretty much evident that gas was out of the tank, and said, "Well, I'm gonna pop down here to the Orlando Magic," then maybe I would have been like, "No, dude."
Yeah.
Because I was emotionally invested in Michael Jordan.
Sure.
Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So maybe it is just that I'm not as emotionally attached to anybody as I used to. I'm kind of just watching for the show now.
Okay.
So, yeah. I'm trying to think what was. Oh, here's the one I wanted for you. So, non-racing announcer that you missed the most. That either retired, passed away, just somebody non-racing voice that you just miss. That you can play it back in your head. You don't even have to YouTube it. You can play it back in your head.
The first name that immediately jumped to mind was Woody Durham.
Voice of the Tar Heels.
Just because he was so significant with me, because most everyone who has an affiliation with a school either went there, they had a parent that went there, or their parents root for them. You know, my dad was a Duke fan, so I'm a Duke fan, or dad's a State fan, I'm a State fan. I didn't have that, so I was, I guess, organically or authentically became a Carolina fan. And I would, again, it's one of those things, you know, rabbit ears. I saw maybe 3 or 4 actual games a year on the old Raycom, but other than that, I was listening to games and had the little the basketball goal you put on your door, so I'm listening to the game and playing it and stuff. But he was just great at painting a picture, and he wasn't. Yes, he was the Carolina guy, but he wasn't overly biased with Carolina. You know, if they were playing terrible, he would say it. But he, the iconic voice, smooth, could do it all. That's the first one that comes to mind. Man, I don't really think of anyone motorsports-wise right now. Yeah, I guess I'll just stick with Woody Durham for right now.
Woody Durham's an easy one. That's one that, like you said, stayed with one place for a long time. And it was also just a different time.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not as big a Carolina fan as I used to be, because I don't get ESPN. I don't have cable. And I'm not really willing to pay for ESPN Plus. It's not worth it to me to make that purchase. And unfortunately, Carolina pretty much plays all their games on ESPN, it seems like, so I never get to watch. So
the ACC Sports Network.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm not as enamored as I used to be, and times have changed a lot. So maybe my love for it's lost a little bit, but yeah, Woody Durham was one. And then a guy who I was never a fan of his team that he worked for, but just could appreciate the greatness, was Vin Scully.
Okay.
And not that I listened to a whole lot of Vin Scully. I probably heard Vin Scully more as a kid on video games because I didn't listen to the Dodgers.
Right. And,
you know, most of the time we ended up with, if it was MLB on TV, it was Fox, and we got the great Joe Buck. But when you learn about his career and you hear some of his work, And then they did this great thing for him when he finally signed off. And I mean, he had been announcing for like 75 years, some crazy number. And it was just like, man, that guy's good. Like they don't make guys like that no more. Nobody sticks around anymore. Everybody moves around. And I get, it's your career. You want to, do what you want to do. It's a capitalist society for now. Go at it, do what you want. But I mean, Vin Scully was kind of just that old school cloth, cut from cloth kind of guy. And he also had that thing. Baseball announcers have this ability, the great ones, to be able to story tell because there's so much dead air to fill.
Yes.
And you could tell the good ones from the great ones from the bad ones. And Vin Scully was one of those guys that I'm sure you could think of guys that they could fit that story right in there, and it fits right in there with the play-by-play.
Yeah, I listen to baseball about as much as I probably watch it now, with the amount of day games that the Cubs play, and I absolutely love him, not just because he's a Cubs guy, but I absolutely love Pat Hughes because he will tell stories, and he'll just get in that story mode, and then like every now and again he'll be midway through the story, you hear a crack in the background, the crowd cheering, and they ain't even talking about that because everybody's so wrapped up in the story, they ain't even talking about what's going on in front of them. But like I said, that's a skill set, and I love it versus the ones who are just trying to force something about the game they're watching, but just start taking off about something, this day in history, or I remember back when, and just go off, and it just draws you in, man. It's like he's talking only to you, feels like.
Yeah. You got one more for me?
All right, last one for you.
Last one.
Finish
strong.
Yes. All right. So a lot of talk, obviously, for good reason, about what we're witnessing right now with Kyle Larson. So I know it's very early and it's very fresh and new on everybody's mind, but we'll just say things continue as they're going. What is it going to take? What do you think it will take for Larson to do, win, whatever, prove for him to be considered later on in our lifetime as the greatest race car driver or most talented? I don't like using the word greatest, but the most talented race car driver.
Championships.
Okay.
That's something that a lot of those greats have. AJ Foyt has championships. Tony Stewart has championships.
Okay.
Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt. I mean, obviously, talent is a humongous part, but I think if you want to stay in that conversation, you need some of the cups to go with it.
Okay.
But I got a feeling we're going to be talking about him for our whole lives about how great he is or great he was and yada yada. So I don't dispute that people will stop talking about him, but it's kind of like that discussion that comes up. Basketball seems to be the biggest one that everybody always has the discussion about, because Michael Jordan's got 6 rings. Some guys, only 1 ring. A lot of people don't win any rings. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mark Martin was a great driver. Didn't win a single championship. Mm-hmm. Does that mean he wasn't a great driver? No. But I think it does kind of temper the conversation a little bit. You don't talk about Mark Martin in the same vein you talk about Dale Earnhardt because of championships. And Mark had position to win a few of those. He just didn't. That's what gets me with a lot of these current Cup guys. You got a lot of one-time champions. Yeah. I mean, there's a few 2 times, but a lot of them are one-time guys. So it's almost like it's hard to. And you know what? Maybe that's an old standard that's going to go away. It might be, Formula One, Lewis Hamilton is obviously, right there. Michael Schumacher, he's got as many, championships or whatnot. But maybe that'll be something that'll change with our generation, where we stop looking at the championships and just look at the greatness.
Okay.
So I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
Okay.
I hope in years to come, people will realize. But you know what? It almost makes you think of the Bo Jackson effect. I don't know if you picking up what I'm putting down with that. Bo Jackson was probably one of, if not the greatest athletes of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, could play 2 professional sports, professional baseball, professional football. But because he didn't string along long enough to get a championship, his career didn't last very long, and he had a freak injury. Mm-hmm. But because he didn't kind of have that exclamation point to put on it, there's not a lot of people in the next generation and the generation after that even really understand how great Bo Jackson was.
Yeah.
If not for the people that tell the story.
Yeah.
So I could see that happening. We'll see how it plays out. What do you think?
I agree with he needs a championship in more than one discipline, and I think obviously we've literally seen him plug and play, win races, big races, and everything he's driven so far. I really think for him to be considered as best driver we've seen, or best driver of our generation, however you want to say it, I think we need to see him do something in one of the upper echelon open wheels, either that be IndyCar, or if the United States ever goes the 4-in-1 route. IndyCar is obviously going to be more realistic for him. If he can, because I think right now, I think it's pretty safe to say drivers that we've got to see, I know we didn't get to see Unser do his thing way back when, but we've been able to witness, I think it's safe to say Tony Stewart's probably the most talented driver we've seen across the board. IndyCar champion, NASCAR champion, USAC, the dirt, all that stuff. We've seen him win and so many different things. We're starting to see that with Larson. He's won everything from chili bowl midget stuff to sprint cars to NASCAR. I would like to see him, and he's the perfect build, frame, reaction, time, ability, adaptability. He's the perfect build for an IndyCar guy. And if I'm not saying he's got to run a full season to win a championship, but if he takes a weekend off of the Coke 600 and goes around the Indy 500, something like that, I think if we see him do something in the open wheel stuff, win a NASCAR championship or two, maybe win a championship in something else, I think that'll kind of bump him up past Tony Stewart.
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. Only God knows when our next episode will come out. It might come out next week. It might come out next month. So make sure you're subscribed to the Half Price Concessions Podcast so you don't have to wonder when our next episode comes out. It'll pop right up on your smartphone, iPhone, Android, tablet device, whatever you're using to listen to a podcast on. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to give us a subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating and a good review. That would really help us out a bunch. Special thanks to our partners, our friends at North Carolina 811, that reminds you to know what's below. Before you do any kind of digging in North Carolina, make sure you hit 811. Our friend Roger Johnson at Performance Center Racing Warehouse. Check him out online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Our buddy Keith Montgomery at Montgomery Performance Consulting that reminds you that he can help you find speed in your race car. You just dial 336-382-1835 and get started today with Keith Montgomery. And of course, our friend Jason Turner at Accelerated Graphics. Make sure you find Accelerated Graphics on Facebook. You can also find him online at worth2tenths.com for all of your wraps, banners, t-shirts, trophy, any kind of needs as far as decals and apparel goes. Jason Turner at Accelerated Graphics can get you covered. Thank you for listening as always. My name is Tyler Williams, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day.